Neville?
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm waiting. Let me
I'm
know.
just on the platform. I'll let you know.
Just 2 minutes. Neville is making it live.
Sure.
A very good evening to everyone. It gives a great pleasure to welcome you all to the 16th edition of India Digital Summit, Supercharging Startups, organized by Internet and Mobile Association of India. The summit is supported by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, and Niti Aayog. I'm your host for this session, Ayushi Mittal from IAMEI. Welcome to the panel discussion on automation and AI, not displacement but advancement of people, rethinking work in new and innovative ways. We would like to thank our digital financial management partner, EaseBuzz, conversational messaging partner, Gupshup, session partner, GoQuick, gold partners, Manorma Online, Blink Digital, and Yellow.ai, and silver partner, ShareChat. Without any further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Sandeep Parekh, partner EY, who will be the moderator for today's discussion. Joining us today, we have a great set of leaders. Please welcome Sharad Kumar Agrawal, CDIO from JK Tires, Utpal Chakrabarti, Chief Digital Officer from Allied Digital Services, and Malay VP from Automation Anywhere. I would request all the delegates to keep posting their questions in the chat box, and the panel will address few of them in the end of the session. Over to you, Mr. Sandeep.
Thanks, Ayushi. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues, wherever you are. We've got a very interesting session planned for now. I think Ayushi spoke about the theme. The theme of our discussion today is really focused around emerging technologies and how they are complementing humans rather than supplementing them. Now, we'll talk more about this with our esteemed panel. I actually have with me three stalwarts today. I usually did introduce them, but I'm honored to be in their company. They happen to be good friends known to me as well. So Sharad Agarwal, Chief Digital and Information Officer from JK Tires. We've got Utpal Chakrabarti, Chief Digital Officer, Allied Digital, and Malay Shah, who's the Vice President at Automation Anywhere. Um, Before I move on, just a quick couple of lines about me. My name is Sandeep Parekh, and I'm a partner with EY. I lead the artificial intelligence and the intelligent automation practice there. I've been helping clients over the last 27 years to generate tangible business value by leveraging technology. I've had the fortune of working with some of the best organizations on the planet, like Microsoft, Unilever, ICI, Mother Dairy, and of course now EY. I happen to be a recent author as well. My book, Automation Conundrum, just released on Amazon, Flipkart. So if you get a chance, please do try and grab a copy. With that, let me quickly get on with the panel. My first question really is, about the new normal. I mean, all of us have kind of got impacted by the pandemic. The new normal is probably a phase that's most used these days. I want to ask a couple of our panelists in terms of how are they actually building and right aligning the digital strategy in this new normal. Sharad, if it's okay, can we kind of start with you and get your perspective from the manufacturing industry? So.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank all of you for having me in this panel of esteemed known personalities from the field. So, as you rightly said, the new normal has really become the normal. The word new seems to be have been forgotten. Probably when we come back to the older ways, then we will start calling that the new normal. Yeah, but fun apart. So this is really a tough situation for anyone to be equally productive, equally attentive, and equally compliant for each and everything, be it from workplace, be it from travel place. So every place is now a place where we have to give our full for the organization for multiple reasons. Now, most of the organizations are seeing a bottom line stress. Not just bottom line, top line stress is also there. And what together we as employees, what has happened, especially at JK organization, we don't consider ourselves as employee. We consider JK as family. So we all of us try together to bear the burden. So it may sound philosophical, but it's really so here. Means people, you are not counted as an employee till you enter double digits of association in years. And you would find people who have completed 25 years, they number in multiple tens of thousands. So we try to share the burden and reap the fruits together. So that's philosophical, but coming to the technological part, we have to ensure that cybersecurity is in place when a person is working from home. And look, we have to be equally aware of the fact that most of our people won't be having the luxury of having an independent room when they are working. And so this has to be, I would say, accommodated, because you might hear a child asking his dad or mom to do something for him or her. So we have to be accommodative, we have to be understanding. All of these things are going hand in hand, and even the family members, the JKO family members, or the employees, let me call them employees for ease of understanding for everyone, is trying to give his or her best to the organization. So technology collaboration tools like this, or A, B, C, multiple tools are there. We have become accustomed to how to use them. We have accustomed to use digital trainings, digital content management, how to share contents, collaborate. All of this has become part of life. And let's see, because today, as all of us know, that in Delhi, it's 100% work from home. In most of the tech companies, though it was still work from home, but in manufacturing companies, somehow we feel more comfortable working face to face. So let's see how the event turns. But yes, all of us are prepared and geared up to take the challenge as it comes on. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharad. I think that's very well said. Utpal, do you want to kind of talk about your perspective from the side, but from the tech organization side and really as a service provider?
Yeah, so my recent journey from the bank
I know.
to a tech company. So here, what we have started is, because I mean, if I don't tell that, then probably it will not make sense. So we started a fintech vertical, and we are working aggressively on a couple of fintech solutions and products. And what we believe is, again, it is linked to new normal. Fintech is playing a very major role, not only in the financial as a whole, providing services to the customers, okay, in a different way, but also if you look at in a larger perspective, the sustainable finance or green finance, what we call it, it plays a very major role. And that is a kind of a philosophy that we have started with, that it is, yeah, definitely we want to cater to the financial needs of these financial institutions by providing them cutting edge solutions and products. But at the same time, we want to contribute to the sustainability part of it. I'll give you just one example. So the financial inclusion part, if you look at, the fintechs has played a major role into that. Okay, because the unbanked population across the globe, okay, are now been getting banked, okay, or they are within the financial ecosystem today. It is only because of the fintechs and the kind of technology, kind of products and solutions that brought into the market with very cheaper kind of an accessibility to all types of customers across the globe, whether it's a very lower grade of the society where they have been, I mean, not been able to enjoy any kind of banking services. For example, take the example of any your driver or your mate or your probably a plumber and all. Okay, although they are doing a decent earning every month, but because as they are not part of the financial system, as all through the cash and all those things, they are deprived of any kind of health insurance, any kind of other insurance or loan kind of things. But now, with Paytm coming into the picture and all, right? So they are been now their income or their transactions has been tracked. And now they can avail and they can enjoy this kind of banking benefits. Okay, so that is our philosophy, and I think that is going to be another new normal. Okay, and the COVID has shown us that yes, this is possible. Okay, I mean, the conventional way of banking is not going to be there. Okay, it is going to be a
Right.
completely new paradigm shift kind of thing. Right.
Right. No, I think Utpal, thanks. That's also very well pointed out. So if I were to summarize, I think Sharad said that hybrid workplace is obviously a part of the ongoing normal, which is no longer new. Of course, the top line or the revenue and bottom line or the profits are continuously under stress. And I think, we going forward need to make sure that employees are treated more like family members because they are working from home partially and partially from office, but reality is that, you need to treat them and think about them from that perspective and therefore bring in technologies to help collaborate in any kind of environment, which is the hybrid environment. And Utpal, you really spoke about green finance, one from sustainability, but more about financial inclusion and ensuring that, a larger chunk of people who've not had the luxury or the privilege of really being account holders or access to financial instruments and assets can really quickly get along on the journey. And unfortunately, the pandemic only accelerated that, which was the fortunate part. But the pandemic is the unfortunate part. So I think with that, I move to quickly the next question, which is, as we digitize, there are a number of challenges every organization kind of faces at different stages. One, there is initial inertia of really getting onto the digital bandwagon. And then, of course, scaling it up is in itself another big challenge. So, Malay, why don't you kind of share your perspective? I mean, given that you are leading a fairly large automation OEM in that sense, a product company. What is your view or what's your perspective? How are you seeing industries in general? What are the challenges they face, and more importantly, how are they tackling these?
Absolutely. No, I think both Sharad and Utpal kind of teed it up quite nicely that digital has become part of our everyday life, which is in a way it's a great thing. But if I were to look at the downside, what we see in organizations is a massive proliferation of technologies, right? I mean, we are all familiar with ERP, CRM system, HR systems, but increasingly there are more and more specialized systems. So there are systems on the back office side, there are systems on the front office side. Employees like working on things like Office 365 or G Suite or Microsoft Excel. So now the challenge happens is that a business process, any typical business process that you see will cut across all this landscape, right? Front office, middle office, back office, and productivity applications. And we try to solve a business process by having more people kind of getting engaged on any business process. Could be things like supply chain order management system or order management process, or could be payroll system, which needs to talk across multiple of these application. And the another downside of the pandemic has been what we see is the massive amount of talent shortage or people shortage that we are seeing in the market. Right? So today it's very hard for any organization, and especially not only in India, in developed markets as well, to really find people who are available to solve for some of those business process issues. And that's where an OEM like us actually come into picture, which is to see how we can automate the business processes across this application landscape. So if I were to look at the positive side, right? I mean, us from a technology provider perspective, it's a great time for us to be in, primarily for three reasons. Today, because of automation, we have a technology that is available that can do any application with any other application without need for complex IT integration. You can orchestrate any business process using bots, as we call it. And by that means, we are one of the largest employers, having deployed more than 3.2 million bots. I mean, basically, our clients have deployed those many bots. In that sense, we become, an employer even larger than Indian Railways or even Indian Army. So that's the power of bots, who can orchestrate those business processes, can help with the talent shortage, can help take over those mundane tasks. So I think that's one great development. The other second great development is that all of these technologies today are available on cloud, so you don't have to go through an expensive infrastructure deployment. I mean, you can start building out the bots right from browser environment. So which is happening with most of the technologies as well. All the technologies are moving to cloud. And I think last but not the least, which I would highlight, is technology used to be the domain of experts, or what we used to call a center of excellence, right? Today, because of technologies like RPA, it is becoming more and more democratized, which means how you can enable your business analyst to develop applications in a low code, no code environment, deploy bot more like drop environment. And as a result of which, when business starts solving for IT, that becomes really, really powerful. So these are the three great things which are happening largely, Sandeep, as we see from our vantage standpoint. And that's why the clients are really leveraging this across the board, whether it's in manufacturing, financial services, life science industry, and across all functions, right? So whether it's finance, HR, IT,
Right.
and so on and so forth.
Perfect. Utpal, do you want to kind of chime in, typically as a consultant to your clients?
Yeah. So as I said, Sandeep,
Utpal, we can't hear you, I think.
am I audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, yeah. So, Sandeep, what I said is we have just started this fintech vertical, wherein we are building fintech products and solutions. But apart from that, another area that we see, and we are already working on that, is the smart cities, right? So, yeah. So, Allied is already a pioneer in the smart city basically
Okay.
infrastructure building part of it. But the demand of the smart cities, if you look at today, so the data is coming from various sources, right? So it starts from your all CCTV cameras in the city, the sensors, the garbage management system, the traffic management system, commissioner's office, then what do you call the local municipal office. Okay, so all data. So now putting those data into a data repository, and it's a humongous data, right? 24/7 collected from different sensors, cameras, and all other things. And so how I can actually bring that data into probably a data lake kind of environment and do some kind of transformation and build intelligent applications on top of that, which
Okay.
actually citizen-centric kind of a application. And also overall, what kind of optimizations that I can do, okay, in terms of your electricity uses in the street lights, your water uses, and all other uses, what kind of optimization. So that is another area wherein AI, machine learning, and all other technologies can definitely bring a lot of values, and that's what we are building. So, I mean, command and control center is a what do you call it? It's a hygiene tool. Okay, so every city, probably smart city, has a big command and control center from where you can view everything. You can start your cameras. You can see everything. You can switch on, switch off, and all those things. But this intelligence. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So probably one in the morning, okay, you see 50 people roaming around in a street of Pune. Okay, so it's a bad alert, right? There should not be 50 people roaming around. But now, how you can correlate that with the actual alert kind of a thing? So probably those people have already taken some permission from the commissioner office for some function or something like that. Now to correlate this data, okay, which is coming from your detected by your CCTV camera, and then you correlate it with whether the permission has been, somebody has taken a permission for a function or something like that. This is really a tough kind of a job in terms of
Sure.
security. Okay, similarly, there are many use cases, in fact,
Sure.
in case of flood or in case of any kind of fire and all other things, and any private properties. Okay, so public properties. So there are multiple use cases. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to actually build that intelligence on top of the command control center, and as well as citizen-centric apps and all other things, wherein actually citizen can get benefit from the smart city facilities. Otherwise, it will not be actually a smart city, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, I think that's great. So just to again summarize this one, some of the challenges, as Malay and Utpal kind of pointed out, one is of course people shortages that everyone has. Then the need for interconnected systems, the need for rip and replace, as Malay kind of called out, and then of course the importance of bringing in data and actually making sense out of that data, as Utpal kind of pointed out, and some of the ways to tackle these essentially is leveraging technologies such as automation, which are far more agile, leveraging infrastructure that is built out of in the cloud, and then, of course, actually democratizing the entire approach to scaling up technologies of these nature. That brings me to another interesting question. One of the challenges that really gets often talked about is this whole play around that automation is going to take jobs away. Okay. In the interest of time, Sharad, your quick take, yes or no, will it take jobs away? And what's your view?
Have computers taken away jobs? I think we are a byproduct and getting more jobs. So
Perfect.
automation is never going to take away jobs. It's going to increase
Perfect.
the
Perfect.
employability.
Excellent, Sharad. Utpal?
So I think there is a short-term and long-term impact. So in short-term, definitely it is going to take some mundane jobs, of course, because I mean, if you look back to our history, all innovations on the automation that we have done are targeted to eliminate the human labor, right, in one way or the other. Right. So in short term, definitely, but in long term, as Sharath rightly said, it is going to create more and more jobs. So that's what I believe.
Excellent. So I think I kind of agree with both of you that it's really not there to take jobs away. But what I want to do next is maybe give the audience an idea of why we believe that it's not really going to take jobs away and it's going to complement. So why should businesses look at leveraging emerging technologies as to complement humans rather than really supplementing them? Sharad, do you want to give a couple of examples?
So let me start from a process in my factories. The heaviest tire that we make is 3.5 tons, 3,500 kgs.
Wow.
Think of it that if just humans were there to move that tire from here to there, what would the fate of humans be, and how accident prone, how safety could have been compromised if it is done just by humans.
Mm.
I'm giving up just a shop floor example. So till the time we have a arm which can be robotic or mechanical, uh, a show which can manage it in place so that a human can operate it by push of a button.
Mm.
So what we are doing, so you can say, we can for debate perspective, we can say that you are taking away job of 20 people, but ideally it's not. So we are alleviating the risk that could have been posed to 20 human lives. So similarly now coming to, so there are multiple things. Means if I look at our plants, which is my first old, my flagship, the mothership plant and the latest plant, the productivity levels per person vary there to the range of 100%. But that doesn't mean that I will shut off the older plant and shut off or just make everything in the newer plants.
Mm.
So because we know that there's a cost of depreciation, etc., that's get accounted for. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to complement the human intelligence with some sort of mundane works which can be done. Suppose if I we there was a time when people used to feel privileged when they used to sign checks.
Mm.
If you get 100 checks to sign, Sandeep, will you feel privileged?
Right. The first thing you will say is that what the hell? इतना
Yeah.
काम करना पड़ेगा.
So if there's a bot which can do it for you by push of a button, so is it complementing or taking away your job? So it's like focusing your thoughts, your ideas for betterment where this intelligence can really be used. So
Absolutely.
that's my take on it.
No, I think very well said, Sharad. Utpal, what's your, can you give a couple of examples from your experience, either in the bank or at Allied?
Yeah, of course, I agree with Sharad, but at the same time, like let's take the most popular example. Okay, so in a couple of years, definitely the self-driving car is coming into the market, right? It is definitely going to come. Okay, probably a little bit later in developing world, but in the developed world, in a couple of years, it is going to come. Now think of the scenario. How many million drivers across the globe is going to lose the job? Okay, and this is certain because once you have an ecosystem wherein only self-driving cars are driving, definitely the human drivers will not be allowed to drive in this kind of a scenario. So, so in this scenario, definitely in short term, people are going to lose their job, and upskilling or reskilling this humongous amount of population, driver population, is also not going to be so easy, right? So there is a short term impact, and we should be cognizant about that fact, and we should accept it, right? But at the same time, probably experts are telling that for building the infrastructure of such kind of a ecosystem, self-driving or autonomous vehicle ecosystem, okay, will require a lot many people and all other things, kind of things. So similar to example in every other field. So this is a very popular example, but in every other field, definitely there is a short-term impact, and we should accept it. And because people are already seeing that. Okay, so if you build a cognitive automation system in your back office, definitely there is a straight 30% cut of your employees, right? And this is visible, and that's why people do. That's the saving kind of thing. But yes, there are a lot many benefits which is coming, okay, and which Sharad has touched upon and kind of thing. So I think it is more of in a longer term, if you look at it, more of what Sharad said. I mean, elevating the nature of things that human do, more cognitively challenging things which machine cannot do. Okay, or some bit of creative things coming into
Right.
picture. But at the same time, that impact is there. So that's what my opinion is, honestly.
Sure. No, I think fair point. Malay, do you want to kind of share your perspective?
Sure. I think I'll share perspective. I think both of you shared perspective from manufacturing and even automotive background. But I'll share perspective from an information worker industry, right? I mean, today we are one of the largest employers in the world. Employing tens of millions of information workers, both in the IT industry as well as in the BPO industry. Now, I'll share a very simple example. Let's say today, when a contact center agent is there or a call center agent is there, we call from a customer service perspective to that particular call center agent. One of the things that all of us would have experienced, could be simple things like raising my credit card limits. You would see that an agent would typically spend, and by the way, if you are lucky, first of all, to get to the agent, but if you are lucky, then you will spend anywhere from 5 minutes to 6 minutes to resolving your query on the call. And out of that 4 to 5 minutes, agent is just, typing away something in the background, and they keep putting you on hold, for that particular period of time. We realize that when we kind of supplement that agent with help of bots, right? So that bots are actually fetching the information of the customer, doing the post-call work, doing the pre-call work, which is required, so that the agent is actually able to spend more time with the customer. When the bot and the agent start working together, we realize that the 5-minute call duration gets reduced to 85 odd seconds, like slightly over a minute, and you are saving that much productivity for that agent, freeing up that capacity and the time. And then so the customer experience improves significantly. What we have seen is clients actually then enabling all their hundreds or thousands of agents with help of automation technology. They are able to get better bill rates. They are able to get better productivity out as well. So in some scenario, we see this was a win-win scenario, right, for everyone. Agents obviously get upskilled. They are more productive. Their salary levels improve. Billing rates of the service provider improves. Customer is happy. Their customer experience improves as well, just by supplementing this piece together. So we view this more as a capacity creation process other than an FTE reduction process. Yes, it will require an amount of upskilling, reskilling, but we see that as a massive win-win for practically all stakeholders, in the.
Absolutely. No, I think well said. Everyone had very valid points. In fact, in my book Automation Conundrum, I've actually covered this topic in great detail, where I also talk about the fact that, jobs which are going to be at the bottom of the pyramid, which do not really need a lot of intelligence and are fairly mundane, right? Which are completely jobs which do create errors, are going to be eliminated. But people will need to be reskilled, upskilled. The reason being that the world, unfortunately, has a very large graying population, right? So countries like Japan or countries in Western Europe or even the United States has a fairly large graying population. And the younger population in countries like India and large parts of Asia is the one that will have to fill in. So people like who lose jobs from autonomous cars or jobs as drivers, etc., would need to be repurposed to pick up other more intelligent work. There's a lot of work, and I think the picture as we see it is that 10 years from today there will be more jobs than people to actually perform those jobs. So I think clearly we need technology to get humans to be able to do a lot more work than they can actually humanly manage, as they say, right? One last question before we can actually kind of close. Just a quick take from all three of you around the tech trends or the technology ecosystem as you see it evolving over the next 4 or 5 years. Sharad, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I like to classify them in three major areas. One is obviously the interaction. We see everybody is passing through a digital experience. So I feel it will be moving towards ambient experience being the norm for every application, every app that we are using. That's around interaction. Second, about information, data analytics, artificial intelligence is has come a big way and is there to stay. Probably exponential intelligence is the way forward. And about computation, cloud has become the norm today. Distributed platforms are coming in, and quantum computing would be the way forward, leading to abundance in computation. So this all has to be supported at base by modernization of the core, and obviously have proper trust in place, either from a cyber perspective, from a regulatory perspective, or from ethics perspective. So that's a directional that I like to say. And this is not my own. I have been reading this through one of the big four's presentations. So, but
Right.
I feel that this is very apt to summarize the coming trends in the days to come.
I think I agree with what you said. In fact, I've put out a video on the trends till 2030, and a large number of what you said are things that I kind of agree with in that video as well. Utpal, what's your take?
Yeah, of course, I agree with Sharath because he has covered most of the things. So definitely, the automation technologies are one area wherein, because still with the automation we are scratching the surface. There are many areas where we can actually do the automation. So whether it is RPA or that is one area. Second area is the data ecosystem building technologies for building the actual data ecosystem. So there are many technologies coming under Hadoop ecosystem, and also now it is available in the cloud for building data warehouses or data lakes or related technologies across that. AI is of course there because AI again the adoption has started. You can say okay. So and there are many applications of AI. It will be there. Quantum computing definitely because there are many areas where AI is now struggling, especially on the optimization area. So if you look at the finance or banking field, there are a lot many optimization problems there. Okay, so and you talk about any stream of business in the banking. So those optimizations cannot be done in a traditional fashion today, okay? Because your classical computers are not being able to perform it real time when it is needed. So now quantum computer can play a major role there because that parallelism that it brings. So if you have hundreds of ways and you need to find out the optimal way. So in a classical way, you have to go one by 100 times, right? But in a quantum, you can take the 100 ways at a time and you can find out the actual this way. And this is going to be the QML, quantum machine learning. It is already picking up. And many of the financial sectors have started building either POCs or something like that to see like how quantum can help in these areas. Within India, also one of the banks, they are trying to set up a quantum COE
Right.
to do one pilot in actual quantum implementation there. And now, like the quantum is available in the cloud, right? So D-Wave has already given a lot of cloud services wherein actually you can write your quantum circuits, you can write your algorithm, and you can actually try and test those. So I think at least in next 5 years, or probably it will take a little bit more because it's still some of the quantum services are not that stable because of the instability of those subatomic particles sometimes, because holding that qubit for a long time is a little bit difficult till now, but people are trying. Okay, so there are two challenges into this quantum field. Number one is definitely increasing the number of qubits, right? So that is one area. So more qubits you achieve, you can solve more and more complex problems. So that is one.
Right.
Second thing is basically the stability of the qubits. Okay, how much time it can hold the information. So that is also a very difficult task. So once we achieve that, and now it is quite a decent, I mean, I would say, But I think in the coming 3-4 years, it will be quite mature, and I will see more and more quantum applications in the financial sector, in all other sectors also, in healthcare also, definitely the healthcare is
Right.
also.
Malay, what's your take?
I'd like to give a slightly maybe an analogy over here. I mean, we are just starting out in 2022, and I kind of made 4 resolutions for myself in this year in 2022. All of it was linked to health. So I said I will exercise vigorously. I said I will do more yoga. I said I will follow kind of a keto or a low carb diet. And I will have a slightly minimalistic lifestyle, right? I will kind of live with that. If I were to draw the analogy with kind of automation technology, right? I mean, if I were to look at exercise vigorous, more and more hyper automation technologies which combine everything, where you are automating more and more across your organization, is kind of an analogy to exercising vigorously. Discover yourself or yoga, is basically organization will discover more automation opportunities using bots itself. So the whole process discovery, process mining, those technologies are becoming, more and more mainstream. If I were to a low carb or keto diet, that is equivalent to like low code, no code technologies, to minimal code that you would use. And minimalistic lifestyle is, don't invest in infrastructure, basically go cloud first. So, those are things that I see will become mainstream, in this particular year.
Right. I think very well said, Malay. So if I have to summarize, I think clearly automation is one of the key technologies that is there. I mean, we are going to look at the cloud in a big way. Ensuring that we are able to get benefits in the shortest possible time with low code, no code kind of technologies is going to be another thing. Hyper automation, cybersecurity, this entire data ecosystem, the regulatory frameworks around these technologies, and of course, analytics. And as Utpal and Sharad mentioned, this whole area around quantum computing and the play around quantum computing, be it with machine learning, be it with stabilizing the qubits, et cetera, is going to be critical. And of course, above all, artificial intelligence. So I guess that really is a great list in terms of the trends as we see it going forward. With that, I'll quickly wrap up. I know we are practically out of time. To close out, I would just summarize the session and say that enterprises are actually reinventing to adapt to disruptions like the one we are currently experiencing, which is the pandemic, right? Emerging technologies such as intelligent automation, artificial intelligence, along with data sciences are turning out to be top levers for reimagining operations, business operating models, and so on and so forth. And emerging technologies are therefore our friends. They are here to help us and not to really uproot or replace us, right? We heard several interesting stories from my panelists, and hopefully it provided you, our audiences, some fodder for thought. I would really like to thank our panelists for their valuable insights. I do hope you, our audiences, got great ideas that you could potentially leverage and deploy in your organization. Finally, I'll just sum up the discussion with a quote from my book, Automation Conundrum. It's really not about man versus machine, but it's about man with machine, right? Again, good evening. Thank you for your time. The floor is now open for Q&A. Ayushi, if we have questions, we can take them now.
1 second, sir. So yeah, it's posted on the chat.
So there's a question that organizations often adapt too many digital productivity tools or change tools very quickly. This can shift the focus from work to understanding and adapting to new platforms. How do you suggest organizations tackle this? Malay, do you want to kind of take a stab at it?
Yeah, sure. No, and just I mean, the way we look at any new enterprise application, whether it is ERP or CRM, it is not just about the digital technology itself, but it's also about the new process and the new ways of working which comes along with that enterprise application, right? So those are obviously all massive changes that most organizations go through. But I think the important part, if I were to also look at sometimes is not overdue in terms of just one another tool, etc. And all the time the rip and replace also may not work. So what we have seen, especially for mature organizations, saying how can legacy work with more newer tools, newer technologies, more newer digital technologies, and at times you can orchestrate that through multiple different approaches, API based integration, workflows, RPA. There are multiple such approaches which are available where the focus is on the business process and on the customer rather than on the tool itself. So I would say the tool is just a means to get to an outcome, but really there are certain benefits that come along with it, and there are different approaches you can try to achieve the same end objective.
Absolutely. Sharad, Utpal, anything you guys want to add?
So I'll just like to add that why an organization will want to change a tool, not calling out anyone. Suppose there's RPA tool A, RPA tool B. So it would be for some good that they are trying to achieve, or rather, what they thought they could achieve with the tool A, they couldn't. So it shall be better to answer the question. It shall be better to do a diagnostic again of the existing tool before switching on to a new tool, or bring that tool to do a delta of what first couldn't do. It shall not be a complete again, it shall not be a complementary solution. It shall be a supplementary solution, if that's possible.
Right. Yeah. Utpal, do you want to add?
Yeah, so I think mostly, I mean, practically it happens because of two reasons. Number one is the cost, okay, because we have seen there are tools, okay, which were initially available were highly costly kind of tools, and then later on, the tools with similar capabilities with very low cost they came into play, and people started adopting those. So that is number one. Number two is definitely some of the capabilities. So many of them, because this is the evolving field, right? And things will keep coming, okay? And we have to do the experimentation. We have to
Sure.
implement different things. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we do some R&D. So this is all part of that that evolving ecosystem that we have. So second part is definitely the capability, because many of the tools are missing those capabilities. Probably they are good for a small organization or for a very straightforward use case. But when you want to build a very complicated use case and all those things, so then probably you require a more robust kind of a tool. And if you have an option, then definitely you try to adopt
Why
that.
not?
So
Right.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's kind of very well said. So I'll just quickly summarize and maybe add in my perspective as well. The way I would look at it is that when we start looking at deploying tools and technologies, we shouldn't think about it as a tool technology. I think our starting point needs to be the core objective. What is it that we want to achieve, right? And then work backwards to say, Acha, to achieve all of this, these are the 10 things I need to do, and these are the 5 technologies I need to bring in. Along the way, if one technology fails or does not really deliver, then of course you can bring in something that's far more better. But I think your uber objective is, or uber goal is what you want to achieve, right? And once you're focused on that, I think adaptation or adaptation of technology is not going to be a challenge, and actually you will not really have to shift focus from work or worry about understanding these new technologies, I think, because you're trying to solve a challenge. I think we are out of time. Ayushi, I know we may have other questions, but I'll probably hand back to you.
Sure, sir. Thank you everyone for such an engaging discussion today. A special thanks to our panelists and the moderator for being here and making this possible today. Another thank you goes to all our attendees who are here with us. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.